and welcome to Beyond the First Response. It's Christy Lister here with my co-host, Robyn Michael, and our very special guest who I already love just in our brief conversation of talking, Debbie Green. How are you today?
I'm doing great. It's been a good week.
Good. Well, it looks sunny where you guys are. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's sunny and with a little smoke because we're up near the mosquito fire where I'm at.
So why do they call that mosquito fire? I tried to Google that and I couldn't figure it out.
So what they do is the first on scene for fire usually gives the incident command name. So it's like based on like maybe a creek or a stream or a bridge or whatever is right by there. And then they go from there.
So it wasn't that they got bit by a mosquito.
No. Up in that area, that's what we refer to as the mosquito area. So there's like a little township, I guess you would call it, from the 1800s that was called Mosquito.
Oh, that's fun. History for the day.
Yeah, and actually I'll add a little bit of history to that. So it's really close to the town that on my mom's side of the family, my ancestors, I guess, great where my grandma grew up and greats all the way back in Georgetown.
Oh, yeah.
My great grandfather was a gold miner, and
wow.
There's a hotel there that my family owned and everything. So,
wow.
Or a bed and breakfast, I think now. So yeah, we're a little concerned.
Yeah.
About poor Georgetown.
I can't imagine. I think about you guys, here in Illinois, we don't really get those kind of fires at all. So luckily. But I always think about you guys.
El Dorado County and has been hit. This is our third big one in the last 5 years. So
yeah, and it just destroys all the forestry on top of homes.
Yeah.
And does it come back that quick? I always wonder.
Yeah, actually the fire, the area from the King Fire is starting to come back, but then now the mosquito fire is back into the King Fire burn scar. So yeah.
I mean, we do brush fires, controlled brush fires around here. And I'm like, gosh, and that stuff goes back so fast, but I know it's not as hot and as long as those fires.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me. Well, thank you for the history lesson, ladies.
Oh, you're welcome.
I like to learn one thing a day and I try and do it early because that's when I can still remember things. Anyway, Robyn always does our icebreaker, and that didn't count as an icebreaker.
I'm afraid. I'm very afraid.
If it was me coming up with this.
I did have a hard time with this one because since we're both in California, I wanted to look up, good tourist attractions, which one, but it's like everybody already knows Sacramento area tourist attractions. So Debbie is a little bit further north from me. I'm in the Bay Area and she's about an hour away from where I live, probably.
About an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. Yeah, because I'm east of Sacramento. So
okay. So since we're both in California, I saw this question. I'm like, this would be a good one. Cause I think we actually talked about this. So me personally, I was born and raised in California. I'm like, I don't know, 4th generation Bay Area native. So I have no intention of leaving California unless someone, comes and sweeps me off my feet and drags me somewhere.
AKA a sugar daddy.
Yeah, right. Or Donovan gets some major, basketball scholarship somewhere on the East Coast. But if you had to move to another state, where would it be?
Oh, Washington. Definitely Washington.
That was quick
about it.
Oh yeah. No, it's when you're in the business, you're always thinking, where do you want to move to before you retire or after you retire? So with our department, it was like Idaho and Montana. And I'm like, no, I don't want to run into those people when I'm retired. So, and we've traveled, my husband and I have traveled up to Washington and my brother lives up there. So it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's cool. And out of the California heat would be great.
So you won't run into me in Montana then. I've never been. I always wanted to go. And that's like a place that I could see myself retiring, or Tennessee. But there are a lot of law enforcement, I think, that retired in Tennessee. So
oh my gosh, Tennessee's a hotbed right now. Yeah,
I know. And I've been wanting to go there for 30 years. I should have
I
gone
say
before.
visit and then leave.
Yeah. Yeah. I get done peopling by the end of the week.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yeah. I'm done peopling by the end of the day. So
Well, yeah, that too. Yeah. So you what was your final position as a 911 dispatcher?
public safety dispatcher 2 with the El Dorado County Sheriff Office.
So when you say 2, what level is that? Like
so
supervisor?
the entry level is 1 and then a 2. I had made it to senior, which is a trainer at one time, and had interviewed several times for supervisor, but never went that far.
I get that. So you were there for 30 years?
27 years with that department, 1 year with Sacramento Police Department. And then I was a military police officer with the California National Guard for several years. So 30 plus years in law enforcement.
Wow.
Yeah. It gets wearing sometimes.
Yeah.
So I understand that during the time, and this is something that I think we often don't take into consideration. And I've been working diligently when we go and do trainings and speaking to people, dispatchers are in fact affected by the call, just in a different manner. You know, the police officers are in their cars going on the scene, fire in the trucks. You hear it through your headset. So you're creating this picture of the scene in your head based on what everybody is saying. Oh,
my picture is far worse than what they're actually seeing.
Oh yeah.
You know, because you make it, your brain literally makes it worse.
It does.
But then on top of that, you're not only dealing with the one call, like the deputies and the firefighters, or they're going call to call to call, where I'm dealing with maybe 20 calls at a time, 30 calls at a time. And, you're just, it's not a good thing, especially when you don't, sorry, my word went right out of, you don't find the resolution to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's the case. I always think like it's this continuum, and it starts off with someone needing to call 911, and you're really the first responder.
Yes, absolutely.
And then each first responder along the way has a piece of it, but there's no one that gets the final story. So every one of you your brain is you're filling in the blanks and you're filling in the pieces, because that's what we do as human beings, right?
Right.
So, yeah, you're the first responder, and you've got a long way before,
Well, and we're still not being recognized for that.
Yeah.
Not at all.
When you answer that phone and you hear that mother, I'm thinking of a specific call, that mother screaming so unintelligibly about her son committing or being dead. He just, the one I'm thinking about is we had a mental health patient who died and his mother found him. Yeah. And just screaming and screaming. But then, it's up to me to find out where she is and how to get her help. And they don't realize the amount of training and stuff that needs to go along with that. And we're forgotten.
Absolutely. And to have to, they're trained to remain calm, but you have to remain extremely calm in order for you to hear and understand the information to get them there. Exactly.
And then, there's some instances where you have to stay on the phone with them until the officers or fire arrives. With our department, we didn't deal so much with the fire. We transferred them to another dispatch center, but you still work with those dispatchers to get the information, and you're trying to get it as much as you can before they get there. And it just, it wears on you, especially when you're dealing with 100 calls a day.
And when you're on the phone with the person that called 911, you're obviously also communicating with the people, with your officers who are going to arrive on the scene
so
at the same time, right?
Right. Most agencies have what's called a CAD system or computer aided dispatch. Even fire has that now. And so you're typing the information and the officers responding can see what you're typing in. They're
Mhm.
not hearing though
Got it.
what's the tone of voice or what exactly is happening. You're trying to get what you're hearing into a written form so that they know what's going on. And your partner who's radio dispatching is trying to get them that information and try to, if it's urgent or not, try and give them the sense of that urgency that you're
Got it.
hearing on the phone.
So I'd like to address that because that's something that I don't think we ever talk about. Really, in a situation like that, there's two dispatchers on one call. You're talking to the caller, and then you have somebody else dispatching.
Right. So what you have is like you have call takers, and then you have your radio people. Some very small agencies like Placerville Police Department, were in our area, has one dispatcher that does everything. So she's not only taking that call, but she's dispatching them on the radio, where a lot of your bigger agencies will have call takers and then your radio people. Some agencies you're sitting right next to each other. Other agencies you're in a completely different room or across the room. So you can't really yell to your radio person or your phone person
Yeah.
to let them know what's going on. So it's just it's varied.
That's I mean, I guess I know that it was that way, but to hear it that way, communication is so hard in general.
Yes.
And texting, so to speak, you're typing it to the officer to get the information or to
Right.
your radio dispatcher. They're taking it how they're feeling. So
Right.
that can sometimes be misconstrued, right?
Exactly. And you try and put that, you have to put it into words and give that urgency, but you have to also be careful what you're typing, because that's also a legal document that can be brought up at trial.
Yeah.
So you don't want to put your personal feelings into the call.
Yeah, removing your emotion to get through the
Yes.
call.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can't, I mean, you can say, you can hear you're yelling in the background, or that, the caller is out of control or something like that, or what they sound like. They may sound drunk, they may sound high, but those are opinions and you have to be careful of what you're putting in.
Yeah.
Right. Now, on the average call of something like that one, before we get into your story, just so our listeners understand, because like we said, we often say you guys are forgotten.
Yes.
And it's not understood. And that's why I wanted to clarify so much up front to make sure that they're hearing the importance of you guys and the effects on you guys.
Yeah.
After a call like that, officers are taking reports, getting back in their cars, most likely by themselves. 90% of them are not processing it. They're on to the next call. Fire department goes back to the station, and more often than not, we'll have a conversation, whether it's a processing conversation or not. That's, they're still talking and not over liquor. When you guys get off that call, I know you're moving on to the next call, but is there something that you're trained to do just to be able to go and
not officially as dispatchers. I think just through attrition and through the fact that I've been in therapy since 2016, I learned to just sit back, take a breath, and go.
Right.
But that's not processing.
No.
Yeah.
That's removing that emotion and moving on to the next one.
Right. That's
Right.
filing it away in your brain and going on. And yeah.
Do you think that the younger processors, now I got that stuck in my head, younger dispatchers are going to learn that differently now as we are becoming more aware of?
Absolutely.
And that's good to hear.
I came along during the time of suck it up and move on.
Yeah.
And was literally told that.
Oh yeah.
And we had a shooting in 2007 where 3 of our deputies were shot. I called in because everybody was calling me at home, waking me up to turn on the news. So I called in and said, hey, do you want me to come in early to help relieve the girls? Oh, no, they can handle it. Thank you so much.
Wow.
And then they were working the next day after. That's not acceptable.
That is not.
It's not at all.
No. And you guys don't really, now I know dispatchers, some departments will bring them in for debriefing after. Was that even
Right.
an option for you guys then?
Not then. No,
No.
my first officer involved shooting, I didn't even know if the officer lived or died for 12 hours.
Wow.
And sitting on that has to be a horrific feeling.
I drove home sobbing. So I'm driving home on Highway 50 during rush hour because I work graveyards and I couldn't see the road. I was a danger to myself and others, but nobody took the time to help me process.
Yeah. Well, and even if the debriefing session is in place, like that's policy, you're supposed to do that, unless you know what that means and how to actually, it's not just taking a deep breath, there's ways of going about that, and someone has to lead it, because even
Right.
at the fire station, yeah, they go back, but a lot of times these guys just go back, and women go back to their room and shut the door,
Right.
sleep it off, or wait, or they go on to the next call. So they have the opportunity to do it, but that doesn't mean that they actually do.
Right. But it's the environment has changed over the last 20 years,
Yeah.
which is good, but it's not where it needs to be
Right.
at all.
Yeah. So you and I talked on the phone for a very long time. It was a great conversation, and
It
I
was
do.
awesome.
Yeah. I'd love for you to share as much as you're comfortable with an incident that happened to you that kind of got you on this path of, I need to getting help for yourself, and realizing that you need to start advocating, and like Christy and I, not wanting to stay silent anymore, because you find out after the fact, like, where was all of this stuff before, and why didn't I know any of this before?
Well, the first the shooting in 2007, I was very vocal in saying, why aren't these girls getting days off to go and process? And so it was leading up to that, and our department was getting there. But this last incident, 2019, I was dispatching the busy channel when we sent the guys out to do out for a marijuana grow, which we're dispatching a rural county, so you have lots of those. And when they got there, they got ambushed. And so I'm listening to the gunfire, and later found out that one of my deputies was shot and killed. And I worked that incident until the second suspect was arrested. And then my relief was right behind me and let me go. So in years past, I wouldn't have been relieved until 7 o'clock. I was relieved, I think 3 hours after the incident occurred at 1:30 in the morning.
Wow.
So this incident, we had the sheriff and the undersheriff and our captain came in. They made sure to have us call in day shift. There was a lot more care. We had an initial debriefing that morning, which was good. And they also allowed the dispatchers on duty to ride in the convoy to take his body down to the coroner in Sacramento, which in itself was, I don't know if that's a trauma or just seeing how much support there was for us out there.
Yeah.
Because the bridges were just lined. I mean, it was amazing. But it's a traumatic event. And this time they did give us days off, which was good. And I made sure to call my therapist immediately and get an appointment for the next day. like I said, because I've been in therapy since 2016 for depression and anxiety as a result of my open heart surgery.
Mhm.
So this was just, I knew what to do, but other people didn't. There was no direction,
Right.
and nothing required. The other girls should have been required to go see a therapist,
Yep.
but that didn't happen.
So did you find yourself kind of in the position of having to lead your management as to what the protocol should be?
No, because they had a really good peer support in place at that time,
Good.
as compared to we had one shooting in 2015, actually right before my surgery, where we had what they called a kumbaya meeting, where we just, everybody involved in the incident came in weeks later after the incident to talk about it. And that was the first time that we had that type of thing. But this time peer support was right there. And I had a person with me for about an hour after the incident, which was good.
Huh.
And actually they made sure that I didn't leave the building without calling my husband first
Mhm.
and telling him what happened.
Good.
So
So you had peer support back then, peer support groups, or is
Well,
it just kind of
we had peer support in 2015, but it wasn't, you had to ask for it.
Mhm.
It wasn't like somebody could go and say, hey, so-and-so's looks like they might need some help. Can somebody maybe, take them out to coffee, do whatever? No, it wasn't that. You as the employee had to call and ask for help.
And so when
where-
you say the peer support, you're not talking EAP. You guys had
EAP
individuals.
EAP is different.
Yeah.
In our county. It's you have to call that too. So
Right.
So when I was having my difficulties right after my surgery and had an abusive supervisor, that supervisor was the peer support representative for dispatch.
Doesn't that make you sick?
It was horrific.
Yeah.
And then when I finally mentioned something about going to HR, then she literally tossed a leaflet at me saying, go to EAP.
Yeah. I mean, do you think in those situations, because I was asked recently about, why do you think, or what is your answer when you have chiefs and stuff that don't agree with the whole model of peer support, or that, there's a problem with mental health in the fire service or with first responders? Do you think my answer to that is always because they are also suffering probably with PTSD and don't either want to admit it, don't understand it, just,
Well,
blind leading the blind, basically.
if they're coming in, like you have sheriffs that are elected, so they may not have been in law enforcement before, and
Yeah.
they come into this, and then they're coming into this with blinders on. They don't realize the job that they're coming into.
Mhm.
And then when they have the PTSD, they can't see that they have it.
Yeah.
And you can't just go up to your sheriff and say, sir, I think you need help.
No, of course not.
And we have to admit, us as people, when we have the signs of PTSD, we're not seeing it in ourselves. We're seeing it in somebody else, because we always see your
Yes.
struggle in somebody else.
Yes.
And I don't know how to retrain the brain and retrain people to say, if you're seeing that in somebody, check you before you react, because you
can't-
probably
it's
have it.
denial. It's
Yeah.
literally denial. I
Yeah.
denied that I had issues until my fabulous supervisor came up to me and she says, call somebody.
Yeah. Well, because a lot of times it's just attributed to a personality flaw. It's
Right. Right.
not like you have to really look at somebody who is angry all the time, or is being a jerk all the time, or, it has emotional outbursts for absolutely no reason, drinks a lot. Like, you have to really look at that, take the person away from it and say, this person is self-medicating or is suffering from something.
Right. And this latest incident, I was treated as the problem employee.
Right. Yeah.
I was lashing out. Even though I was going to therapy, but therapy is every 6 weeks because there's so many people using it.
Yeah.
And so I was written up and put on a performance improvement plan before another supervisor looked and said, wait a minute, she's got something wrong with her because of this incident. This incident here caused all of this.
Yeah.
And so the one supervisor who she pretty much saved my career and my life, put me in her office, said, you're not coming out until this workman's comp paperwork is finished.
Good for her.
That's huge.
And that's when I was able to breathe the sigh of like, oh my God, there is something wrong with me.
Yeah, it's not you. It's not you.
Right.
Before you were injured.
Yeah. And I was just not, it was like I was coping the same way I had coped for all the other ones.
Yeah.
Right.
We just suck it up and drive on. Let's go.
Joke around about it and go on to the next call.
Right. And one thing that didn't help though was 2019, this incident happened. And then 2020 happened.
Yeah.
And so the thing that you don't want to happen is secluding yourself in 4 walls on your days off happened. So that just added on to the trauma.
Yeah, and I can understand that too, because, well, same with you, Christy, our ex-husband passed in 2019. Yeah. And so the same, I feel like I had kind of a delayed grieving period. This last year was finally my shit hit the fan. And there's, I did do therapy, but it was like, man, it's been going on 3 years and I still am just crying periodically for absolutely no reason. So,
but it's important to state that that's grieving and that's processing, and you never know when it's going to happen, and it's okay for that to happen.
Happening too much.
Yeah. I do my crying in the shower so that my husband doesn't see that I've been crying.
Right.
Well, and that's not to say too, we say, the term suck it up isn't good, but that's not always the case. So we have kids, we have, grandkids, family, we have a life that we have to live. So there are moments you can sit in it, but you can't stay in it. So you do have to suck it up at some point to actually live and get on with your day and take care of your life. But you have to, it's still there. You can't deny that it's still there and you need to revisit.
Right. But giving people the tools to start immediately after that trauma, and so that they continue on the healthy path, rather than make them come back to work the next day and not deal with it.
Now, do you think, because this is my big, what I think needs to change in this is, it's not starting right after the trauma, it's starting counseling prior, so that when you do hit a trauma, you're able to know that going to talk to your counselor is going to be needed and beneficial.
Yes. I'm involved. I have a law enforcement group on Twitter, and everybody, I see these dispatchers going, I had a really bad day, I'm going to go home. And I'm like, do you have somebody to talk to? That's where I'm like, get a therapist now before it's too late.
Yeah. And a therapist that understands first responders.
Oh my gosh, yes. I've gone through so many. My very first therapist with Kaiser, I had to sit the first 15 minutes of every session, explain to her the hierarchy, chain of command to her, because I was referring to supervisors and managers and captains and lieutenants, and she didn't understand what I was talking about. But every single session, I had to explain that to her.
Yeah. And I wish that when that happens with these therapists, and if anyone's listening, take note, just excuse yourself. Just say, you know what, I need to find somebody for you that I don't have to do this every single time. Like there's no shame in accepting the fact that you're not the right fit for somebody, because you are taking time away from them processing and healing.
Yeah.
And that's not what you signed up to do when you took your oath or
No, and if you
degree.
know that somebody has requested somebody specifically for military or law enforcement,
Yeah.
because I always request that. Do your research.
Yeah.
Go in and find out. If you have to call the department and talk to a chaplain or something, do it.
Yeah.
To find out what the infrastructure is there, because it's going to take time. Or just play it off. Oh, okay, you're sergeant or whatever, and write that in your notes and then look it up later.
Yeah.
Exactly. Do you know how often I do that in my job on a daily basis? I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
they mean right now. Okay.
Yeah, I am forever talking to Siri. Like I said, I listen to your podcast all day when I walk, and I'm always forever talking to myself. Hey Siri, take a note. And then at the end of the day, I go through the notes and look stuff up.
Yeah. It's important too. So obviously you were highly affected, as we were talking about, by that incident among
Yes.
many others, but that was kind of your point.
My final diagnosis was PTSD and complex PTSD from the job.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the difference between obviously PTSD and complex?
So complex PTSD is where it builds over years. So they usually refer to complex when starting in childhood.
Mm-hmm.
So especially those that aren't in the military or law enforcement. But with law enforcement and military, you start getting those traumas little by little, and not even a trauma, just incidents that you need to process that aren't processed. And it just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds to whatever that final straw is.
Yeah. What do you think? I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about everything you said about what it takes to be a dispatcher and the cumulative traumas that you've taken in. And I guess, me personally, and I don't know about you, Christy, I think you would be fine, but me personally, I think about that and I'm like, how is any human being set up to do a job like that? And is it fair? Like, how is it fair to put that on somebody? I mean, obviously we have to have dispatchers, but what is it about you, do you think, or any dispatcher that makes
I personally wanted to have a life of service.
Yeah.
Community service. And that started out with being in the National Guard, and then kind of moved its way into maybe I should be in law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And being in the National Guard, we ended up going to the Rodney King riots
Mm-hmm.
back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided I don't want to be on the street.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I had young children. I had a young baby at home. I don't need that. So that's where I kind of went into dispatch. And I really liked it. I liked that I didn't have the face-to-face,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still helping people. You're getting them help.
Yeah. And do you feel like you thrived on that?
Oh gosh,
adrenaline?
yeah. I probably could have been a nurse if I didn't have such an aversion to blood.
Yeah.
I'm okay with blood unless it's on my kids. Then it's
I'm
not
okay
cool.
with other people's blood, not my own. Though.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Strange.
I would have ended up somewhere, but this was perfect. And don't get me wrong, I loved what I did.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I can tell. I can tell you did.
Well, I think that's important to note that, because
Yeah.
when you talk about this, people may come out thinking, why would I ever want to do that? That's a shit show there, and
Yeah.
they hate it.
It's that, but it doesn't happen every day.
Right.
That's the thing. You have those days where you have the public calling in and saying thank you, or you have that 2-year-old calling on the phone and wanting to chat with you.
Oh my God.
Those are my favorites.
That's amazing.
Oh, that's hysterical. Well, real quick with that, why don't we go ahead and take a quick break? And then when we come back, let's talk a lot more about those positive calls and ways to overcome, tools that you can give people when they are right after a call.
Okay.
So we'll be right back. We are excited to be able to start our day with Badge Brew Coffee. Hey Robyn, did you know that Badge Brew has a new charitable badge collab roast?
Hey, Christy, I thought I heard that was going to happen.
Yeah, it's called First Response Roast with a spicy, smooth, medium roast with flavor notes of spice cake and citrus undertone.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And if that doesn't tempt our audience, a portion of the proceeds go to First Help. Oh, and don't forget, they're first responder family owned. Whether you're on day shift, night shift, or the shift of raising your family, Badge Brew has your coffee ready and waiting.
So let me ask you, what's your badge of honor? Find out by going to badgebrewcoffee.com and order yours. If you want the First Response Roast, click on Charitable Badge Collab. I know I am. Hi, and welcome back. Thank you for taking a quick break. Robyn and I grabbed our Badge Brew ourselves while we were listening to the commercial. So I'm ready. I'm pumped with caffeine now. So
You wanted to join the conversation.
Well, hello, sir. So Debbie, you alluded that, it's important to know that it's not all bad.
Yes.
And the cute 911 calls from the young.
Oh, I love
just learning the number.
Calls. Yes. I just think they are so adorable. Or they're playing with the phones. A lot of times people don't realize even if you take the chip out, it still calls 911.
Oh.
Yeah, you think you're giving your kid the phone to just mess with and they're good.
Yeah. And so,
funny.
or the little 4-year-old that refuses to give the phone to her mom because she's going to be in trouble. And it's like, no, sweetie, you're not going to be in trouble. And then you hang up the call and go, hey, we might want to send somebody out.
Yeah.
Because mom's so mad, but
that's so funny. Mom needs a break.
I remember at my job, we used to have to you dial 9 to call outside of the office. Yeah. And then our extensions, you'd have to dial 1 as a prefix.
Oh,
so 9, I can't tell you how many times we were calling San Francisco dispatch.
Oh my gosh.
And we would hang up, because your automatic response is, oh shit, what did I just do? And then you're like, okay, did anybody see that? And then the phone rings back because you have to call back.
Oh, yeah. Right? And Sacramento got the 3-number first of the 7. It was 991. And so when that one came in, we SAC PD, when I was working there, and you get a lot of calls from that. But yeah, it's fun. I love the good calls. They just, where you just laugh.
Yeah. That's good though, because that's the humor.
It is.
You have to have that.
I had a guy that called on Thanksgiving. He was in Tahoe and called on 911 saying a bear had broken into his outdoor freezer and taken his turkey. And the first thing that out of my mouth was, oh, bummer. And then you go, oh, wait, I'm not supposed to say that. But then he laughed. So it was very lighthearted. But yeah, it was. You get calls like that all the time.
Did he want you to arrest the bear?
I don't. Well, we handle bear aversion up in Tahoe.
Oh, okay.
But it's still in the freezer. You forgot to pull it out anyway. It's not going to happen for Thanksgiving.
Exactly. So yeah.
You have to put that in the bathtub the night before when you forget and just rotate it throughout the night to defrost it.
Yeah. So, you have those fun calls and the people that are nice always make your day. It's just that 10% of the time where somebody's having a bad day or it leads into something else.
Right. You're talking to people most of the time on one of their bad days.
Yes.
And to remain calm during that when you're having a bad day
is
very difficult.
Very difficult.
And to keep that filter.
Yeah, there was a point in time I had no filter.
Yeah. I really don't have a filter. I mean, I high five myself if I don't say something out loud.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're retired now.
Yes.
Were you put out on medical? Sorry, it was like put out to pasture.
I pretty much I was put out to pasture. So it'll be 2 years this October. So I was signed out of the job by my workman's comp psychiatrist, and she put me on permanent disability back in February of 2021. And so that's when I got my attorney and explored options. What are my options? So I had the option of going out on disability through CalPERS, which is our retirement system.
Yeah.
But because I had so many years in, it was more money for me to go out regular retirement than it was to fight the 6 months to get the disability retirement. So when I finally pulled the plug, it only took me 3 days to get approved.
Okay.
Good.
So I'm out on regular retirement, not disability retirement.
Yeah.
Good.
But the thing with in California, and the thing with our department, is dispatchers aren't called what's safety, where we don't get safety retirement in California. Safety retirement for police officers and firefighters is 3% at 50 years old. So that's 3% times however many years you put in, and then you're eligible for retirement at 50. Where dispatchers are 2% at 55 right now. And I think it just got moved up to 62 or 67.
Wow.
Yes.
And is that because they don't feel that it's I know that they don't look at it as public safety.
They look at us as operators, as your county operator, your 411 person. They don't
phone
look
operators.
at us. Yeah. Your secretaries, because that's what they were in the beginning.
Yeah.
But it's become so much more than that. And we not only need, but we deserve. We've put in the years, we put in the blood, sweat, and tears to have that. And not only in California, but nationwide.
Yeah, it's almost like, once again, they're not treating mental health the same as they do physical health, because, firefighters and police, they're using their bodies, their physical out on the job. So obviously they recognize that going above 50 is going to create a hardship, but it also creates a mental hardship, and that's just as important.
Oh, exactly. And with dispatchers, I love my supervisors that stayed till 65. They were great, but they weren't at that spot that you need to be for a dispatcher.
Right.
You're not quick. You're not.
Yeah.
You can't work that busy channel.
And that's just science. That's
just because you're older. You don't have the eye-hand coordination anymore. I was getting to that point, and I retired at 54. So that it's not only the administrations of these departments, but it's also the state governments and the federal governments that need to get involved and get us to where we need to be. Because I'm not going to sit back quietly anymore.
Yeah. So you said it just recently got pushed out to 60.
I think it's 60, either 62 or 67 for dispatchers now.
And that's in the state of California.
And that's in the state of California under PERS for that specific, and that's in our county. So our county didn't opt to give us safety pay, which I would be making about $1,500 more had I been under safety.
And you're unionized, right?
That's what I was just going to ask.
There's
the
a lot
didn't
of
fight that.
Yeah. Our union is it's operating engineers, and they cover Department of Transportation, animal control, all of those guys. And dispatchers, we were only 20 people in our union of hundreds.
Right.
So we didn't count, and they didn't fight for us. And
is there potential to be rolled into the same union as the police officers?
I honestly think dispatchers do need that.
Yeah.
They need to be in with the deputies and the officers and the firefighters, and or at least somebody come up and say, hey, let's make a whole dispatcher union.
Right.
You know,
because because people, and again, that goes back to you're not being recognized as what it does to you mentally and physically.
Oh, exactly.
You
I
take
mean-
this off, you take the headset off, but it doesn't leave you.
No, it does not.
And
Yeah.
you've created a whole story that may or may not be how it went down, but based on what you're listening to, that
Right.
story sits there. And
Oh, yes.
it like fast forwards and rewinds, and it just goes over and
Well,
over.
and because you're dealing with so much, I mean, it's not just that one call. It's all the pardon my French, shitstorm of calls that you get some nights.
Right.
Mhm.
And you get home and your brain does not turn off.
Right.
No, of course not.
And you're not
And
given the
ha-
tools to teach it how. And you're sitting, and for your shift. And are your
Right.
shifts 8 or 12, 10?
We had 12s, which I loved. I
Yeah, 'cause
really
then-
did, because it enabled me to be at home more.
Yeah. But you're sitting 12 hours a day.
But you're sitting 12 hours a night. So
How many days a week is that?
so we worked when we were full 12s, we worked 3 days one week and 4 days the next week.
Okay.
So that was great. And then our department also instituted a wellness program,
Mhm.
so that you could, during your shift, you could get up for an hour and go walk,
Mhm.
which was fabulous.
Yeah.
That's huge.
I can't tell you. And then on my breaks, I would go outside and walk too. But we were a department that you could do that.
Yeah.
Whereas these departments that have 1 or 2 girls working, they can't do that.
Yeah.
They can't walk outside on their breaks, if they get breaks at all.
Gosh, that's
Yeah. Well, and that's like, so I'm in the banking world. I'm a mortgage lender, but that's the same thing for our tellers right now. There's, 2 on. They're sitting there. They don't get to leave the building.
Right.
And if they have to go walk out and get something from their car, if I'm not in there and there's only one other person, they're not doing that. They can't. And
Right.
that's not fair in general.
Well, and it's not healthy, especially when dispatchers, a majority of women. You got to go pee sometime.
I was just gonna ask that. What about going to the bathroom?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know Placerville Police Department, their girls had these extra long cords because you're plugged into a console.
Yeah.
They had extra long cords that would go to the bathroom.
Oh my God.
Yeah. You do what you have to do, right?
Exactly. If you have to bring a pot to piss in the dispatch room, then you do that.
I'm going to send a couple boxes of Depends to all the dispatchers.
There you go.
Yeah. Actually, that's a really good idea.
They would get the joke. Let me
They
tell you,
would. Yeah, I
they
know.
would get the
I
joke.
know. Huh.
But yeah, I mean, and because there's such a myriad, every dispatch center is different.
Right.
And so, I mean, some people get breaks, some people don't,
Mhm.
and that needs to be addressed with these departments.
It does, because it affects you. Now that you are retired out, I'm assuming you're still seeing your counselor.
I actually have not in the last 18 months, unfortunately, and I've been doing okay. But I am actually, I said enough is enough. I was waiting for a specific person because I had been exposed to what's called brain spotting, which is similar to EMDR. And it worked really, really well for me. But the counselor, she does emergency stuff for the local departments. And we've had a lot of stuff going on up here. So I figure her time is more well spent helping those in crisis right now. So I start back next Tuesday
Good.
with
Good.
Kaiser.
Good.
And
Good.
then also there's a group of firefighters down in Lodi that have started a support group for law enforcement and fire.
Good.
And I'm going to that next Tuesday also.
Good.
So that's once a
huge.
month.
Yeah.
Because any support that you can get, because we always say, you leave the job, but the job doesn't leave you.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And
Last summer was my first summer not working fire season.
Mm.
And it hit me hard. It
I can
really
imagine.
did.
Yeah.
And This year, not so much. I mean, I'm still getting that little twinge, but it's not hitting as hard this year.
So let's just talk about that so people understand. You know, you retired out. Obviously, you had to, but you didn't have necessarily any plans in place, right?
Right.
You were still working through that. It's difficult when you don't have plans in place, and then you're sitting there, and
Oh my
the
gosh.
fire season, it will be a trigger for you because that's like a
Yes.
big boost, and you want to go help. And how do you, as being retired, hopefully people will have hobbies and
Oh gosh, yeah.
jobs lined up, which we know that doesn't occur very often because the job has taken that from you, or the time that you spent at work has
Right.
taken that from you.
Yeah.
Is what does that feel like? And what could you maybe suggest to people just coming out and when you're being forced to
Gosh.
retire, so to speak, you're not prepared.
No, you're not. I was preparing for 2024. That would have been my 30 year. I wasn't prepared for this, but luckily, well, I don't know, luckily, my youngest had a baby in
Aw.
2020. So I do childcare for my grandson now, who just turned 2. So I guess, you know, things work in mysterious ways, as they say.
Right.
I also knit, I sew. I don't know if you can see behind me right there.
Uh-huh.
I do these paintings.
Oh,
That's cool.
That's a thin gold line, and I do thin red line and thin blue line.
oh.
We're
Wow.
gonna have to get those from you.
Yeah.
We'll have to- yeah.
So yes, this is another thing. So I make them for morale for local departments.
Good. And when you bring them in for local departments, what do you say to them?
I don't know. I made this for you. I just
Yeah, and I
delivered
know
a
they
smile.
love it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I've got 7 that are hanging in public buildings right now. But
Good.
I do other types of pour paint. It's called pour painting, and I've done other types and like seascapes and other things that I've given to people. But
So
I
it's
find
good therapy for you.
it is.
Good.
It's more mental.
Yeah.
Putting it together. But
I've
Yeah.
heard that a lot, though. A lot of people will use painting for that purpose,
I do that.
where I would paint like a preschooler. So
Well, I
it would
like
not look good.
painting. I paint like furniture and stuff. I like
Yeah.
yeah,
painting
but having
furniture.
something, whether it's
Yeah.
sewing or like during the first part of the pandemic, I was sewing masks for all my neighbors
Mhm.
That's cool.
because
It's
we
a
couldn't
great way
find
to
them.
focus. Like you have to focus on something else. And when you're getting into the details, your brain shuts off.
Yeah.
An
Yeah.
hour goes by and you're like, oh my God, I just thought about something else besides that call from 10 years ago, or, you know, whatever trauma is.
Yeah, I was very angry when my psychiatrist signed me out for work. I going, so you're sending me from being active and doing something to being home alone in my head.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she goes,
Yeah.
yes. And I went, oh, great.
And what am I supposed to do with that?
Exactly. You know,
Sometimes I wonder if there's, so like you're in Sacramento, they've got, or the area, and there's the wildfire season, if there's opportunities at base camps. Cause I know a friend of mine runs first responder therapy dogs, and she goes and visits the various base camps and just has the dogs sit out there. So
yeah,
I'm sure
I
there's
don't
other
know.
ones
A group of us retired ladies from the sheriff's department and one of our dear friends, we make cookies
there. Mhm.
and just take them for morale to, you know, the fire department or
Yeah.
sheriff's department. We go especially to dispatch because, you know, they're literally stuck in there the whole time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something, but it makes me feel like I'm doing something.
Yeah. Well, and still being around that culture, because I know that was one thing that I felt I was scared of losing. I lost my identity of being a firefighter wife, a firefighter family, you know, and so I kind of like infiltrated department, I guess. And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's about where I'm at, because you know, once I mentioned retirement and lawyer and workman's comp
Yeah,
and the other
right.
thing, I pretty much got cut off from my department.
Yeah.
I understand that.
You
Yeah.
can't talk
And-
to her. Don't tell her what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, and I felt very out of the loop
Mm-hmm.
for the
Well,
last 2 years.
And I think truth be known, when I'm noticing just in observations of watching police retire out, since that's what I deal with the most, they kind of lose touch anyway. You know,
Oh,
it's like with
yeah.
every job, you know, oh, we'll stay in touch, we'll be there. And then there's
Yeah,
nothing.
bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what job it is.
That's everywhere.
It's everywhere, but it makes it more difficult when now you've gone through and you've dealt with a job that has been in your head for 30 years, 20 years, whatever, when you retire, and now it's there and you can't get that adrenaline by running back into work and burning it off there.
Right. Well, I don't want that adrenaline anymore. Thank you.
No, that is true. That is true. I like the adrenaline going to get my coffee in the morning.
I honestly don't know how I did it. I really don't. Now that I've been out for almost 2 years, it's like, what the heck was I thinking?
Yeah.
And I do think it takes about 2 years for you to like let go of that
Yeah.
mindset of I got to go back, and looking back going, yeah, why did I deal with their bureaucracy for so long?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. And I had to be told you're not going back to
Mhm.
get that out of my mind.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because
Even then, I think I
still
would
had-
struggle with that.
It's struggling, but I think it's freeing. Now I can go, and I'm back to work. So I have a real job Saturdays and Sundays,
Mhm.
Good.
and it's on my terms
Mhm.
Right.
on the days I want to work, and I'm get paid for it.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing, it's the days that your husband has off that you can
Yes.
get away.
Exactly.
well planned.
Exactly.
Planned or played.
But
That's
yeah,
why
I
you're
work-
still married.
Exactly. Well, we've been together for over 25 years, and I think the only reason we've been this long, he worked day shift, I worked night shift.
I get it. I get
Yep.
it. Yeah. Well, as we wrap up here, Debbie, thank you for being so open and honest about the struggles and how important it is that the headset is no different than putting the vest on
Right.
or your fire gear on. It is all the same. You're all going to the same call, just from different views. And we really need to do our buddy checks on all of them
Yes.
and their
Absolutely.
families when they come home or stop coming home. So we appreciate it.
And
And-
that's one thing too. The dispatcher families are not treated the same
Mhm.
at all.
Yeah.
They're forgotten also.
Well, and I think as much as they say that police families, you know, once you're blue, you'll always be blue. If you have a much like the Catholic families, if you have a voice and you're using it and that's not what they want to hear, well, they kind of forget about you
Oh yes.
because you're bringing
Definitely.
up things that hurt that are touching them here that they haven't dealt with.
Right.
And
Where everybody checked after my big incident, everybody was checking on spouses from, the guys that were out there. My
Mhm.
husband never got a call.
what a shame.
Yeah. It is shameful.
Yeah. Well, we're here for all the dispatchers and they need to know that we know they're
Yeah.
not alone or that
Exactly.
what they deal with on a daily basis. And we bring attention to that in all the education. When we go do our first responder readiness classes, I talk about that and I make sure
Good.
that it is not just police. It is not just fire, but it is dispatch. It is the admins. It is the correctional officers
Yes.
that are all in the same boat.
Yeah.
You just have a different oar in your hand.
Exactly.
And that's okay. But we are recognizing it and we are bringing a voice to that. And for the thanks of, Blue Help or First Help, but in general,
Yes. Yes.
that you go through it all, and we appreciate everything that you guys do on a daily basis to make sure that the community is as safe as the police do and the fire do. So thank you so
Right.
much.
Yeah,
And-
thank you.
What is something, Debbie, that you can help our first responder families, our non-first responder listeners, and our first responders do that can help them to get through their week?
Well, what I did when I was signed off on October 8, 2020, I put myself on a schedule, first of all, but the first thing I did was I made sure I walked every single day outside in the sun. Then I look for something positive every single day. Even if it's me getting out of bed, I cheer myself for doing that.
Yes.
And I posted, I don't know, Robyn, if you've seen it, but I posted on Facebook so that
I've
I'm
noticed that.
accountable every single day
Yeah.
for a positive.
Good. Good.
Love
You
that.
put it out there in the world.
Yes,
It's going to hit somebody who needs it.
Yeah.
exactly. And that's why I'm not being silent. I want somebody to hear what I'm saying and say, know that there's hope out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You
It's
just
a
made the day
pleasure
easier.
meeting
Oh
you.
my God, I made it through without crying.
Yeah.
Good.